Let's start it with our first news. Sean Brady addressed the recent fight announcement on the Brady Bag Show with clarity and determination. Reflecting on his current position in the division, he emphasized that regardless of when the matchup occurs, his ultimate goal remains the same, to prove that he is unmistakably deserving of a title opportunity. Brady opened by acknowledging the practical reality of matchmaking in the UFC. Whether he faces this opponent now or later, he said, he will have to handle the challenge eventually. Riding the momentum from his recent victory over Leon, Brady views the upcoming fight as the next necessary step in his pursuit of the belt. He framed it not as a detour or a consolation bout, but as an opportunity to solidify his claim. Once he defeats this younger contender, Brady believes he will be undeniable for a title shot. He discussed the concept of undeniability as more than just a soundbite. For Brady, it is a process. Continue to fight, continue to win, and accumulate performances that leave no reasonable doubt about his standing. He insisted that consistent, high-level performances will force the promotion to acknowledge his status. In his view, victories speak louder than rankings or rhetoric. The results inside the cage are the currency that compels the UFC to act. Brady also addressed the role of rankings and decision-making within the promotion. He made a clear distinction. Rankings alone do not determine the matchmaking. The UFC ultimately decides how the division moves forward. The fighters, the fans, and the published rankings may influence opinion, but the promotion controls the matchmaking levers. Because of that reality, Brady intends to control what he can: his preparation, performance, and record. If the organization resists granting him the title shot he believes he deserves, he will remain an active competitor who fights for pay and for personal pride. He emphasized that he is not afraid of work. He loves to fight and will keep taking on challenges until his path to the title becomes unavoidable. Throughout his remarks, Brady communicated a pragmatic confidence. He does not expect perfect matchups or ideal timing. There's no perfect matchup in the UFC, he observed, but he trusts his own ability to adapt and win against any quality opponent. He acknowledged the depth of the roster and the reality that every fighter in the UFC is elite. Everyone's tough. Everyone hits hard. That acknowledgement did not dampen his resolve. Rather, it underscored his readiness to engage with the division's best and earn his way to the top. In closing, Brady reiterated his simple but resolute plan: keep winning, make himself impossible to ignore, and let the results speak for themselves. If the title shot does not come immediately, he will continue to fight because he is a competitor first and foremost, and through relentless performance he intends to force the conversation until the championship opportunity is inevitable. Before we jump into the next story, we have a small favor to ask. If you're enjoying the content, please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell icon. It really helps us out and ensures you'll never miss an update. Move on to another news. Brazilian middleweight contender Caio Borralho has set his sights on one of the biggest names in the division, former UFC champion Robert Whittaker. In a bold and respectful move, Borralho took to social media platform X, formerly Twitter, to publicly call out Whittaker, suggesting that the two meet inside the octagon early next year. Late last night, Borralho posted a direct message aimed at the Australian star, writing, "I heard there's a card in Australia in February 2026. At Robert Whittaker, what do you think about a dance in your hometown?" The message instantly caught the attention of fans and media alike, sparking conversations across the MMA community about whether this matchup could realistically happen. Borralho's call-out didn't come out of nowhere. The Brazilian has been steadily climbing the UFC middleweight rankings with a string of impressive performances. Known for his well-rounded skill set, composed striking, and calculated ground control, Borralho has positioned himself as one of the division's most promising prospects. He's made it clear in recent interviews that he's not interested in easy fights. He wants to test himself against the best, and few names carry more weight than Robert Whittaker's. For Borralho, a fight against Whittaker would represent both the toughest challenge of his career and the biggest opportunity to establish himself as a legitimate contender for the middleweight title. Facing a former champion on his home turf in Australia would not only test his skill but also his composure under pressure. Such a matchup could also serve as a pivotal moment in his rise through the rankings, a chance to prove that he belongs among the elite. From Whittaker's perspective, this potential matchup is intriguing as well. Whittaker remains one of the most respected and dangerous fighters in the division, a man who has fought and beaten nearly every top contender at 185 pounds. Following a career filled with battles against the likes of Israel Adesanya, Marvin Vettori, Jared Cannonier, and others, Whittaker has often found himself in the role of the division's gatekeeper, the man every rising star must get past to earn title contention. A bout with Borralho would make perfect sense for a February card in Australia, an event that would undoubtedly draw massive local support for Whittaker. The stylistic matchup would also be compelling. Borralho's methodical and intelligent pressure game against Whittaker's crisp, high-volume striking and championship experience. It would be a classic test of youth and ambition versus veteran skill and resilience. While Whittaker has not yet responded to the call-out, the MMA world is already buzzing with speculation. Fans are split. Some believe Borralho needs one more win before stepping in with a former champion, while others applaud his courage and ambition, seeing this as the exact type of challenge that could accelerate his rise. If the UFC decides to move forward with this matchup for the rumored Australia card, it could easily become one of the most talked about fights of early 2026. Whether or not Whittaker accepts the challenge, one thing is clear: Caio Borralho is ready to prove he belongs among the middleweight elite, and he's not afraid to call out the division's best to make that happen. Move on to another news. Veteran UFC middleweight Meerschaert has made it clear he will never doubt Khamzat Chimaev again. In a recent interview with Home of the Fight, Meerschaert reflected on Chimaev's dominant performance against Dricus du Plessis (DDP) and admitted that he underestimated just how good the Chechen-born powerhouse truly is. "I'll be honest," Meerschaert began, "I was surprised. I really thought Dricus was going to shock a lot of people." He explained that his initial prediction wasn't rooted in any disrespect toward Chimaev, but rather in how Dricus had consistently defied expectations throughout his career. "Every time Dricus fought, people counted him out, and then he went out there and proved everyone wrong," Meerschaert said. "So I thought maybe that pattern would continue." However, once the fight began, it quickly became clear that this was Chimaev's world and Dricus was just visiting. Meerschaert praised the sheer dominance of Chimaev's grappling, aggression, and composure inside the octagon. "The way Khamzat controlled the pace and distance, the way he imposed his will, that was something special," he said. "It's not just power, it's intelligence and precision. He knows exactly when to explode, when to slow things down, and when to take over completely." Reflecting on his past experiences with Chimaev, having fought and lost to him in the first round back in 2020, Meerschaert admitted that he has seen firsthand how overwhelming Boris can be. "Even back then, he was a monster," he recalled. "But after seeing what he did to Dricus, I can't see a scenario where I'd ever pick against him again." Meerschaert also touched on why he had previously believed Chimaev might struggle at times. "I had seen him have tough moments against elite welterweights," he said, referencing Khamzat's gritty battles with Kamaru Usman and Gilbert Burns. "Those guys are incredibly strong grapplers, some of the best in the world. So I figured maybe there were ways to test Khamzat if you could survive his initial storm." But after the DDP fight, Meerschaert acknowledged that any doubts about Chimaev's dominance across multiple divisions have been erased. "As dominant as he's been through his run, I just can't pick against him anymore," he continued. "You watch what he did to Dricus, a tough, big, well-conditioned middleweight, and you realize this guy is different. The power, the control, the mindset, it's championship material." In closing, Meerschaert summed up what many fighters and analysts have started to admit quietly: Khamzat Chimaev is a once-in-a-generation competitor. At this point, Meerschaert said with a laugh, "The only person I might pick over him would be a heavyweight, and even then, I'd probably still pick Khamzat." His comments serve as both a reflection and a warning to the rest of the UFC roster. Chimaev's blend of relentless wrestling, explosive striking, and unbreakable will has not only impressed fans, it has won the respect of the very fighters who once stood across from him. Gerald Meerschaert, a seasoned veteran who has faced some of the best in the world, summed it up perfectly: "You just can't doubt Khamzat Chimaev anymore." Move on to another news. Fight week drama has struck again as multiple fighters have been forced to withdraw from their scheduled bouts at UFC 322 due to injuries. Among those affected are Serhiy City and Austin Bashi, both of whom confirmed their withdrawals through social media, leaving their respective opponents, Malcolm Wellmaker and Jamal Emmers, without confirmed replacements for now. The news was first reported by MMA Junkie's Nolan King, who broke the story that Serhiy City had been forced to pull out of his highly anticipated matchup with Malcolm Wellmaker. City later took to Instagram to personally address fans, expressing deep disappointment over the situation. "It's heartbreaking to write this," City began, "but unfortunately, I have to pull out of my fight on November 15th for UFC 322 due to a brutal shoulder dislocation during practice." He went on to apologize to both his opponent and the fans, noting how much he had been looking forward to competing on the card. "I was very excited for this opportunity, but I guess it just wasn't meant to be this time," he wrote. "I'll do everything I can to heal quickly and be back as soon as possible. Thank you to everyone for the love and support." City's statement was met with an outpouring of encouragement from teammates, fellow fighters, and supporters who recognized how devastating such injuries can be during a training camp. A shoulder dislocation can take weeks or even months to fully heal, depending on severity, often forcing athletes to halt all sparring and grappling activities. Meanwhile, Austin Bashi also shared unfortunate news of his own, announcing that he too had been forced out of his scheduled fight against Jamal Emmers on November 8th. Bashi revealed that he has been battling an injury that has prevented him from training properly and that, after consulting with his team and medical professionals, he decided to prioritize his long-term health over short-term competition. "Unfortunately, I won't be stepping into the cage this November," Bashi posted. "I've been dealing with an injury that hasn't allowed me to train, and it needs proper time to heal. After talking with my coaches and medical staff, we agreed the smart move is to recover fully before getting back to work. Thank you all for the support, I'll be back soon." Both withdrawals represent significant setbacks for the fighters involved, especially considering the visibility that comes with competing on a numbered UFC event like UFC 322. For Wellmaker and Emmers, the situation creates uncertainty, as the promotion will now have to secure short-notice replacements if they are to remain on the card. As of now, the UFC has not officially announced replacement opponents for either bout, but according to multiple reports, the organization is actively searching for suitable contenders to step in. Short-notice opportunities like these can often serve as breakout moments for rising fighters eager to seize the spotlight. Injuries are an unfortunate but inevitable part of the sport, and this week's developments serve as another reminder of the physical demands placed on mixed martial artists as they prepare for competition. Both City and Bashi have vowed to return stronger than ever, and fans will undoubtedly be eager to see them back inside the octagon once they've fully recovered. For now, UFC 322 continues to evolve as the promotion works to finalize the updated fight lineup, with fans keeping a close eye on who will step up to fill the empty slots left by these two promising athletes. Move on to another news. Tensions appear to be rising between UFC management and current lightweight champion Ilia Topuria, following a series of cryptic statements and public frustrations from the Spanish-Georgian star that have sparked talk of an early retirement. According to a recent report from Legazpi, a well-known Spanish MMA journalist with close ties to Topuria and recognized for his memorable interview with Max Holloway, things behind the scenes at the UFC have become increasingly strained. Over the past several weeks, Topuria has been open about his struggles with motivation and frustration over stalled matchups. He's expressed feeling as though his fire and love for the game are beginning to fade, a sentiment that has alarmed both fans and the UFC. The source of his frustration seems tied to a series of failed or delayed super fights. First, the much-discussed showdown with Islam Makhachev never materialized. Then, ongoing talks around a fight with Paddy Pimblett reportedly lost momentum, leaving Topuria without a clear path forward. In a recent interview with the Nelt Boys, Topuria shocked the MMA world by saying that he was so uninterested in fighting Arman Tsarukyan that he would rather vacate his title than face him. That remark, according to Legazpi, triggered a major reaction inside UFC headquarters. Dana White and the UFC matchmakers were said to be far from pleased with Topuria's attitude, especially considering Dana's long-standing disdain for fighters who bounce between divisions, avoid mandatory challengers, or threaten to walk away from the sport. However, this situation appears to go beyond standard promotional frustration. Reports indicate that Dana White is genuinely concerned that Topuria might actually step away from MMA altogether if he continues feeling uninspired. Behind closed doors, the UFC has reportedly begun discussing potential alternatives to keep the champion engaged and motivated. One of those options includes a dramatic move up to welterweight, with a blockbuster matchup potentially in the works against the winner of Islam Makhachev versus Jack Della Maddalena, a super fight that would immediately capture global attention. While White is typically reluctant to make such exceptions for fighters, preferring to stick to divisional order and merit-based matchups, the unique circumstances surrounding Topuria's stardom appear to have softened that stance. The undefeated champion has become one of the UFC's biggest international draws, especially in Spain and across Europe. Losing him, either to retirement or burnout, would be a major blow to the organization's growing global market presence. A source close to the situation described the UFC's current mindset. Dana's not happy, the matchmakers are scrambling, and Ilia's patience is wearing thin. They're trying to find a solution before things get worse. In short, Ilia Topuria's recent comments about potentially retiring have caused real waves within the UFC. The organization is walking a fine line between asserting control over matchmaking and accommodating one of its most promising young champions. Whether Topuria's frustration leads to a higher weight showdown, a renewed title defense, or a shocking early retirement remains to be seen, but one thing is certain: Dana White is taking this situation very seriously.